Okay, good day, people. Hope everyone is well. I thought I'd do a shout out here to Darryl Sloan's channel. He's just been doing some really fantastic videos lately. Put up a video a little while back on non-duality and just posted one on death, and it's really good. I think he's really dialed into a lot of things that I've tried to talk about on my channel. And if you haven't subscribed to his channel, if you haven't checked that channel out, please go look at it. I'm going to see if I can try to follow out, I guess, some of the ideas to try to clarify them, explain them as they relate to some of the things that he's been talking about as well. I guess the first one would be to try to see how to explain what it means to say that the ego is an object of consciousness rather than the source of consciousness. So, and, some of it gets sort of strange when you're going to try to compare things to dreams and video games and that sort of stuff. But I'll see if I can't maybe give some examples that will resonate into some of that. The claim would be something like this: that the world, it comes out, we'll say, of consciousness, but that consciousness has come out of earth, right? So Alan Watts has a line where he says, just as a tree flowers, so the earth peoples. And then people, world. That is, world is a kind of an eventing that grows out of the consciousness that's grown out of the earth. And the earth is relating to itself in various ways. And then at a certain point of complexity, those kinds of relations, they release this thing, consciousness. And consciousness is an expanse, we'll say, of space and time. It's a recognition of something there, that is the world, and one of the items in that world is this self, or this ego. Now, a different way to say all of this is to say there's a kind of ongoing eventing, and that ongoing eventing is conscious awareness. And conscious awareness, it makes room for, that is, it's the clearing of world and self. World and self show up as correlates in this cleared space and time that consciousness is. And, when you wake up in the morning, you find yourself in a room, there you are, and you remember in some sense who you take yourself to be, and you have some sense of the immediate world that you're able to perceive. But before you woke up, when you were dreamlessly asleep, and there's, that's sort of like the earth as earth, without the earth bodying and through those bodies worlding. I mean, see, I think for Heidegger, it was like, how do you talk about the worldhood of the world? The world isn't just an object there waiting to be discovered by an ego, or it's not as if there is a world as even a kind of process. I mean, I think that's maybe a better move toward it. But you got to ask the question: how does the world world? How is the world worlded? And it's worlded through bodies, right? I mean, we're bodies, and our bodies have senses, and those senses, they're continuously effacing themselves to open to what they're not. Right? I don't normally see my eyes, but I see what my eyes make possible. I don't hear my ears, unless there's something wrong with them, maybe. Same with my eyes. If I see spots, then there's something wrong. But normally, my eyes, they're part of that conscious room making. That's, again, process of earth liberating out this clearing of consciousness that then seems to represent, or we'll say become aware of, these objects in the world, like the trees and the dogs, and there's houses and whatnot. But then there is myself recognized as an object in the world. And then I think what happens is people cover over all of that, what I was just talking about. Instead, they end up with something like, they just cover over the earth needing to body, and they cover over all of those connections, And they kind of cover over consciousness itself, and then they reinscribe it as if that once it's been cleared and disclosed that I'm over here and the world's over there and I can understand myself as an object, again, this sort of ego self, then people think that consciousness is some sort of product, some sort of activity of the ego self representing the world. And so rather than seeing, again, this larger event of consciousness releasing and appropriating self and world, instead, people just begin with the self and world that have been disclosed, and then they imagine it's a question of representation, that the ego over here represents the world, and that's sort of, we use memory and we use imagination and this kind of stuff, and it really misses the way that we are places and moments of the cosmos becoming aware of itself through a certain position, through a certain space-time location, right? So think of it, there's a great little discussion of some of these issues in the book called The Book by Alan Watts, where he has a chapter in there called The World is Your Body. The World is Your Body. And in there he has a wonderful discussion. Well, it's funny too, because the subtitle of that book says On the Taboo Against Knowing Who You Are. It's you discover your true self, your real self, when you realize that the same energy that comes from the sun that runs the rivers is the same energy that circulates your blood and runs through your body. I mean, you are, again, your place and moment of the earth worlding. You're not a thing there on a dead rock just representing it. It's the whole thing is an ongoing it's a symbiotic system on countless levels. But in this chapter called The World is Your Body, he gives the wonderful example of the rainbow. And he says, consider a rainbow. And you look up in the sky, and then you say to yourself, well, and this is many people, they'll say, well, if I weren't here, that rainbow would still be there. And they kind of imagine that the little ego self is representing that rainbow, sort of like neuroanatomically in some way, right? They think of themselves as getting access to an object that is there, and yet that's really not right at all. No, it's consciousness, the same consciousness that releases and appropriates the worldly items and the ego, that is constituting those relations which make the rainbow what it is given the observer. So simplest way to say it is, if we have the rainbow in the sky, and then I say, well, what is it that makes the rainbow? Well, I need the light, I need a certain kind of moisture, I need a certain kind of angular relationship of the observer, and then the rainbow appears. Now, if I suddenly remove the moisture, is the rainbow still there? And people say, well, no, you need the moisture for the rainbow. But if I say, if you remove the observer, is the rainbow still there? See, many people, I think they still go, yeah, it's still there. They imagine that this ego self is representing the rainbow rather than seeing the way that consciousness itself is releasing and appropriating all of those. And then the ego that gets released and appropriated, sort of disclosed in the world as, I'm over here and the world's over there, right? That ego, it instead of seeing itself as part of the process, again, of earth growing conscious, instead of that, it takes it to be the source of it, and it's all just reduced down to an issue of representation. And I think the more that somebody starts to pursue this, they start to realize that, that it's not just that there is a body and then there's a world and then the body represents aspects of the world. It's that in consciousness, relations between things can become delimited and thereby create kinds of realities. So, going back to the example of the rainbow, the rainbow, it's not really there in the sky, quotes, as something. It moves relative to a person. That's why you have the whole, you can't go to the end of the rainbow. But if multiple people are there, they're actually seeing slightly different rainbows. There's many different rainbows as there are people. And again, it's not saying that people make it up. No, that there are particular relations of space and time that get disclosed through consciousness, and those implicate a self that is there in the sense of the self is there, the ego is there, disclosed within that clearing that consciousness makes. But it's not as if the sole relationship between the ego self and the world is one of representation. No, this really misses the much more significant fundamental relations all around us. At any rate, check out Darryl Sloan's channel. He's just laying down some things very clearly, very articulately, and I'm enjoying his channel quite a bit. Okay, take care.